Our sign-up list right here for folks that wish to speak today. 3-minute limit.
You're here in the flesh.
Wendy is unavailable today, so you just get me. I would like to start off by thanking the 6 people that have come in, or this is 5 people that have come in and spent their time to listen to me talk for hours on end and go through some pretty monotonous reading, and I really feel like people are giving 100% of their interest and their focus to this. I feel like people are really going through this with a fine-tooth comb, which to me is excellent. That's what we were looking for when we set this up. We really want this to represent our community, and I feel like these are great representatives of our community, and I've enjoyed working with each and every one of you. So thank you for coming and spending your time. I know time's not free, so I would just like to start with thank you for that. We started the quarter. I think most of the folks here have been here before, so I'm going to cut my list a little short. This is the Material Selection Policy Committee meeting that we're doing today. Let's see. The plan is to go through the policy and make sure that it's done in a fair and open way in the public's eye. I would like to say that at the end of this, our goal is to have a 30-minute window in which people are able to speak, and there's a sign-up sheet right here on this counter if you would like to sign up for a time. And 30 minutes is a hard, 3 minutes. People are allowed 3 minutes to speak, and that's pretty hard. We'll be timing. The rules, we're not here to discuss current or past employees. We are here to address public issues in an open and respectful way. I would like to see people speak openly about their opinions and concerns about this, and we would treat them respectfully. And then it is important to the board that our collection policy follow all applicable state and federal laws and codes. And my hope is that this policy will be able to be presented to the entire board on February 16th at the Thursday board meeting. That's 10 to 11 here in this room. And what we would probably do is, if we don't complete our work today, we will read it on Wednesday the 15th. We will have I've scheduled this room from 10 to 12. And we'll have an open reading then if we don't get completed today. And then I will probably pass it out to the board members, and then they will read it prior to the meeting on Thursday. And maybe the idea is maybe we just discuss areas of concern for specific board members. Is that clear? Mm-hmm. All right, so let me get the business part of this out of the way. So we called to order at 10. Sorry, I didn't get my so I need to do the roll call.
Charlene Wells.
Charlene. Okay.
Hackett.
And
Doug Nowak.
Mary Esther Wilson.
Mary. And
Laura Anderson.
all right. And I'm Lee Colson. I am the Zone 5 trustee. And just so people know, I do plan to run at the election that will be in May of this year. So in May, my board seat is open. Okay, so we need to approve the agenda.
I move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Okay, and then agree.
Agree. Agree.
Agree.
Alright, and I agree. Okay. And then, did folks have a chance to go through the minutes from the last meeting?
Yes.
Okay, is there any errors or factual corrections? Could I get a motion to approve minutes?
I
Motion.
I second it.
Okay, and then do we agree?
Agree.
Agree? Agree.
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 All right. And I agree. Okay, so then, I think we could go right on to sort of reviewing the policy items that we've kind of already discussed. It was brought to my attention that I left in what was it?
Democratic
The
Society.
Democratic Society and the policy that we talked about taking out, so I removed that in the current copy that's in front of you, so that's out. I also talked to the librarian in, the librarian, she said that they no longer have the genealogical section reserved. They found that once, like the 23andMe and the Ancestry.com and all that kind of stuff came along, all of that pretty much moved to online and it's more accurate than it used to be. So I redlined that in the current copy so that it will be taken out because we don't do that anymore. And then, I guess then the next thing I would talk about is the change in the terms, and you can see it on the Laura's copy of the material reconsideration form, and also on section 6.7 of the reconsideration form. And it turns out that I use patron pretty constantly as a definition for someone that could activate the reconsideration process. And having talked it over with a couple of different folks, it seemed like cardholder would be a much more specific term that for someone to activate that reconsideration process. And I know that the library was founded on the idea that we would not have library cards, but within the computer system that everybody has to sign on to be a member of the library to check out books, they have a digital card.
Well, just the comments, we were talking about this before, just so for newcomers to the library or whatever, it doesn't confuse people. I'm fine with card holder, why don't you just say digital card holder? And then if somebody wants to know, well, what the hell is that, then they can ask at the library.
And then it's clear.
Then it'll be clear.
Okay.
It'll be clear that we're not talking about people here.
Well, I think we need to define it somewhere in the policy, what cardholder is.
Well, card holder is defined in the policy, it's not in this material selection part of the policy, it's in the how to become a member of the library part.
I have something along that. I agree with you that the reconsideration and material reconsideration should be cardholders, yet just for asking at the top one, that first line, I think it should still be patrons. Just that section where it says cardholders may find materials in the Belknap County Library that do not support their opinion beliefs, where they can go to the staff. I think that should be patrons, because somebody just visiting the library that's not actually asking for a reconsideration, but looking for an alternate material, they can still approach a staff and say, hey, I don't agree with this book, and staff can still point them in a different direction. So I don't think we need to change that one to cardholders. I think it can still be a patron, somebody who's just visiting the library, looking at books, but not necessarily checking anything else.
Someone that doesn't live in our community.
Well, they could, somebody visiting that's coming, yeah, could still go to the library.
Just to clarify, sorry,
Yeah,
you're talking about directly under 6.7.
correct, that first line. Instead of changing that to cardholders, leaving that one as patrons, because that's just talking about going to a staff member and saying, this book doesn't cover what I think it should, and then the staff says, okay, you can go, this is another book. If they don't agree with it, it doesn't talk about actually putting the book up for reconsideration. It's just somebody going to the library. I'm sure there's people visiting our community that stop into the library and look at it.
But you're not saying that they're requesting.
They're not gonna
reconsideration.
they're not gonna check out a book, they're just looking for a different option.
But when you mention reconsidering the book.
I think it needs to be a card holder.
Right.
Well, that's under reconsideration about kind of library material, so it has to be a card holder, but
Yeah, because that's what
There.
that section is. It's
Okay, well,
reconsideration.
That paragraph is
But
not.
I can't imagine anyone going into the library that wouldn't be wrong,
Oh, for sure.
you know,
For sure.
and so because that is under reconsideration,
Okay.
it needs to stay. And the digital, I think that makes sense because that's the world we live in. You know, digital, because we are in
It's just a little clearer.
yeah,
Okay.
defined.
So
But does that make
overview-
sense?
I mean, I can
Because,
see,
because that is the reconsideration section.
okay,
Well, and really, that was my focus, is when I was using the word patron as the title for the people that could activate this system, I wanted to change that. So to me, the people that activate this system need to be members of our community and involved
yeah,
in our.
I agree with that.
And that's why I changed that one specifically to card holder.
Okay.
And I just realized that under the A, I still call it a patron reconsideration, which I would change to digital card holder.
Where is that at?
oh, on the,
Under the,
Oh,
on the
I
side.
just missed it.
Is that where you're talking about?
No, on the, right under reconsideration 6.7, go down to 1, and then 1A, I still call it the patron reconsideration.
Oh,
And then it
oh,
would
yeah,
be-
yeah.
It would
So,
be digital card holder.
yeah.
And then I would change that also on the title of the patron reconsideration to digital card holder.
Right.
So there's a couple of movements there. So
I
it
do
would
have
all be
just
consistent.
a little grammatical, is it says card holders fills out and signs. I think we need to either take out the S, digital card holder fills out and signs, or take out the S on the fills and signs, so it's grammatically
Where's that at?
on one. Card holder, the digital card
Oh.
holder fills out and signs, or the digital
I
card
would change that.
holders fill out and sign.
I call that digital card. I'm sorry.
Yeah, just take it out.
That's
That's
all
all
I
I
care
care
about.
about.
Okay, and then my last thing that I got from the last meeting is that, talking to the new interim director, Lynn Silva, she would like to remove the for staff portion in number 2. Because she would like to have all of the reconsideration forms brought to her directly, and she thought that would, she saw a couple of different advantages of that. Number one is that the people that want to activate this reconsideration system should go directly to someone that has ultimate responsibility for activating the system. And number two, she thought that it would give the process the importance that she wants it to have.
Yeah, I agree with that. I thought we had talked about it, but it might have been a different section of this that.
Okay.
Because we
Do
did
you
want to
need a
go.
motion to make this change?
I actually don't think so. I think while we're working on this as a draft policy, that we can kind of go through it pretty loose, but if you would like to, if that would make.
No, I was just asking, I'm fine with making the change. It's just
Okay.
good.
I think when we finish discussing all of it, because there's a lot of points that I have that I would like to.
Right, sure,
So, then that might be a motion item,
right. When we get
once
to
we're
it.
done with the whole reconsideration policy.
Right. And I think that is, those items are basically the only ones that I brought out. The stuff that we covered last time. So then, I know that there are lots of a couple of folks anyway, with comments that kind of want to clarify this or change this a little bit, or we can start there.
You want to start?
Yeah.
Okay. The whole packet does not need to be returned to the director, just the reconsideration form. And I think in here, the way it was worded, that it said that the packet is returned to the director. Yeah, there on number 2, the county library director will forward, okay, so. And then, of course, like, my question is, who's keeping track of when these are presented to the board?
Didn't it say that the director would?
So the way I kind of imagine the process is we have to have an agenda out 5 days before the meeting. And that agenda is pretty set. And no action items can be discussed in the trustee meeting without being on that agenda. So, my idea is that if a person has a reconsideration material to bring before the board, they will see in 5 days prior to that meeting that they're going to be on the list for their material to be reconsidered.
So if they have a reconsideration to the board, then they need to watch the agenda.
Well,
Or will they get some sort of notification?
I think it should.
Okay.
Keep it down for that. I write it down, it doesn't have to.
Right, yeah.
Okay. So I think that is a process that I would like to discuss with the director before I thumbnail sketch something that.
And I think that we need to have someplace on here, or do we, yeah, or, okay, we do have the bottom, the initial, so we have to change that to the director's initials on the bottom of the reconsideration form. Hard copy received by director. And then the date, so.
You go into the log.
Right, yeah. And I was discussing with Lee, if there's some way that we can, if there's several reconsiderations for the same book, if we can bring them before one meeting instead of having 3 different meetings, if there's, I don't know how logistically that, I mean, if the director is the one that's receiving all the
Right.
reconsideration, then she would know which books were up for reconsideration. And it seems like it might save some time if there's several people that are objecting to the book.
Yeah.
To have them all in the same meeting.
Yeah, I mean, if.
My guess is if that's happening, they're working together anyway. If there's a group of people that have turned in the same month, the same book, I'm sure they're collaborating. That just seems like too big
But
of
the
a
way
chance
that
to-
this policy is written, that it has to come before every single reconsideration, not under one meeting.
No more than 3 reconsideration requests.
So
Maybe
then-
we could have that be 3 consideration requests be 1 book, 3, instead of the requests be a book, 3 different books.
Well, and if there's a group getting together and discussing that book, maybe they can have a representative.
Right, yeah.
Because otherwise, they only get 3.
Yeah,
In a calendar
it would,
year.
it would make sense.
I mean,
Yeah,
you know.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, and then that would also expedite, it would save them one of their, if they so chose.
Well,
And
they
it would
get-
expedite.
They're 5.
That's 5.
Right.
5 in the calendar.
There's 5 in a calendar year, but 3
Okay.
per
3
meeting.
per meeting.
Reconsiderations.
Okay,
So, I guess the thing I would just admit right on the face of it is 3 was just a random number I picked. You know, I saw it as 15 or 20 minutes, if we have that much time at the end.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of different ways to do it that I've actually been looking to, and I believe Adrian told me about, they just set it up for a special meeting. they have a special book
Every
reconsideration meeting.
Every month?
Well, I don't know if they
When
do
needed.
it
When
as,
needed.
I
As
think they
needed.
do it as a when needed. And part of the definition of special meeting is it can't be set beforehand. So we couldn't write in policy that we're going to have a special meeting about this stuff. But it might be something that we do. Does that make sense? And I don't know that I can exactly say we're going to do that, because it depends a lot on how much we get and how many people have complaints and what books we're talking about and if they're grouping. So,
Maybe we can put in the policy, if there's, let's say, 10 books up for reconsideration, that a special meeting can be called and address those books? I mean, can we do something like that?
I would have to look at that. I'm kind of thinking no. Because a special meeting is not something that you can schedule in any way. It has to be special, and it has to be within a time limit. If not, then we fall under the 5 days for the agenda rule. And we have to have the agenda out 5 days prior to the meeting. And that may be something that we do too. You know, maybe we get enough books that need reconsideration that we start scheduling 3 times a year or 4 times a year, or whatever, quarterly, whatever.
I thought you said you couldn't schedule a special meeting.
Well, then we just have to make it part of policy, and we would say, like, the second Wednesday of June, we
Every
have.
quarter, whatever.
Yeah, we have, this is the time we do book reconsideration.
I think that would work better for the board, myself, but if they could get quite a bit of time frame before they have to reconsider the book, so that they can have a chance to look at it. I don't know how you can, every month, have 5 days before a meeting to figure out what the book says, or whatever, so, I don't know.
Yeah, because a lot of times when you're reconsidering a book, you should read the book from beginning to end.
And then that way, it would be a lot easier for the person that's filing the reconsideration to be able to attend the meeting, and maybe to consider that the meeting, I guess. What do you think?
I think this level of detail is probably not necessarily appropriate for a policy statement. I think the director and the board can work most of this out. I think, having the meeting at night, so the person who's complaining, obviously that's reasonable. Put that in there. And some of this other stuff seems to me to be kind of self-evident.
A case-to-case basis.
Well, that's what we were talking about last time, it depends on how many. Because again, I think it's still important that the book has to be part of our library. And not just a title gotten off the internet.
Would it help what you're thinking to add in here, what you had first brought up, that the director would be the one that's in contact, mediating between the reconsideration, the card holder, and the board on when that meeting is gonna be? Like, that was your original concern.
Right, yeah.
So if we add a sentence in right after, on that third line, the hard copies by the director, a sentence in there stating that the director would handle any communication between.
But from past experience, there's been some conflict with the director, so.
That
how much-
shouldn't be, that's the whole reason we're doing this, is to specify what the director is in charge of and how they are handling situations. So that might make it clear, it might be something that we don't need to even state. That's what we're trying to decide, is what boundaries are we putting on that director?
Right. Doug, what are your thoughts?
I hear what Mary Esther's saying, I agree with it. That's what we're here for, to establish what that process is to a degree, but I also agree with Murray here that I think that's something that, the director and the board kind of figure out how that internal system will be, as far as keeping that continuity moving forward. That's just my opinion. I think we might be getting a little bogged down in the weeds, but that's just me.
I guess I'm reluctant to commit to change, to some of these solid items when we haven't really run the system yet. It's like, to me, to my mind, you gotta kind of run the process and see how it's gonna work, and then figure out what tweaks you need to bring to it. Because this is basically a standing start. We don't know anything about this process, and we can kind of imagine how it's going to go, but I don't think we would be.
So you want, as a board member, you are okay with having this at every board meeting?
I think that it would be a way for us as a board to represent the community more clearly. I think is the way I would see it. So even if we don't agree with each vote that's presented before us, we as the elected members of the board are the voice. And then if they want to change, then they vote for different people.
Okay, so my other point was, do we want to put in the policy what the action items that the board can do are? As far as keep the book in the library when they reconsider it, or recategorize it, or remove it?
But I think it was already in there that it has to remain until we.
No, I mean, what action items can the board take? As far as, does that have to be in the policy?
I don't think so. I do remember what Adrian had brought up, at the end of the last meeting, that she thought that an option should be, and I didn't notice if it was on here, that it's not necessary, people might not necessarily be asking for materials to be taken out of the library, just moved to a different section. Like if it's in a young adult and it isn't appropriate to be in a young adult, it needs to be moved to an adult section,
Right.
that type of request, not take it out.
So if you look just above where the
Yeah,
card
did you
holder
put it?
is
Yep.
highlighted, it says what action is being requested.
Okay, thank you, I just thought of that.
Reclassification, removal or
Yeah.
replacement of
Yep.
current materials. And I don't know that, I just basically told this as somebody else's form. So I don't know that reclassification is the exact word.
It covers it.
I
It
think
does,
so.
it does.
I
It's
mean,
reclassified.
I just want to make a comment here, just looking over the next 2 or 3 years. The odds are the most likely kind of thing which would put this system into effect would be something a lot of the West Coast based, quote, charitable foundations are doing, unquote, is they're flooding libraries and schools all over the country with these, what I would consider to be pornographic, graphic novels and other types of things that are really aimed at kids for what are ultimately political purposes, and they just happen to contain, pornographic aspects to them. That's the type of thing that's most likely to set off the system, and I think what we have written here strikes me as something that can deal with that fairly effectively with one of those categories that's in the form.
So I would draw you back to the very first page where we say we follow all the state and federal laws, and if it's defined as pornographic, then we don't have it.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Yeah,
that's-
Well, I think it is that people will try to do that because it's happening all over the country, and my point is being that I think the way that this is written, you have a framework to deal with it that strikes me as being something that is likely to work, so long as the people who are implementing it behave in goodwill and you don't have, say, for example, a radical director who's decided to sign on with the American Library Association and clear our local library, quote unquote. I don't think that's likely to happen here. And I think the policy, especially with the options that you just went over here, I think this policy, so long as people are behaving in good faith, can deal with these challenges that are likely to, unfortunately, be in our face over the next several years.
I agree. I think, the platform laid out does establish those trigger mechanisms appropriately. But again, everybody has to be in good faith too, so I agree.
Well, and I will reiterate, and I did talk to the librarians about the policy, and I know a concern was the book could come in. If a patron or a digital card holder wants to request a book, you know, and I think we all have our own opinion, that book does not go on the shelf. It goes behind the counter. That card holder comes in, takes the book to their own home, and that's perfectly, legal because, and that book is returned again under the counter. That book is never out on the shelf. And that's for an individual. Yes.
So let me clarify, what you're describing is the interlibrary loan process.
But I had heard that was a concern, that these books are coming in going on the shelf, and they are not going on the shelf.
No, it's not a concern.
No, I don't think anybody has any concerns about interlibrary loan that I've heard.
Okay.
Nobody's approached me.
Well, I have, so I just thought I would throw that out.
Well, and then, I've actually heard that there were comments about the books being held behind the shelf that only can be administered by the librarians, and that also is not correct. What they did is, the example that was used was the Harry Potter series, and so the Harry Potter series was very popular, and they would keep extra copies of the Harry Potter series behind the desk, and if one was checked out and somebody else came, they would either give them that second copy. It was not a regulation, it was just a management of resources. So I wanna make sure that the interlibrary loan process is clear, because that goes directly to the person that requested. And then, if there are books behind the desk, they are there to manage the resources of the library, not to limit access in any way. It's just their process of dealing with popular books. Does that make sense?
Just real quick, I had something on the material information request form. I think it needs the date on the bottom, just like we do.
It does.
The reconsideration form has a date, but the materials request form, I just noticed that it didn't get a date on it. I just wanted to point that out. Because I think that is important to have a date on it. You had brought that up.
So you know what draft you're dealing with.
Yeah, well, and even when it's, even when it's,
That requested material request form.
Yeah.
So these are the-
Like the date on the
This one.
There we go.
date on the bottom.
Like-
You had brought it
Oh,
up in the
there's date on
very
the
first
top, like this
meeting.
one, there's date on the top.
No, I just mean so that we know if the policy starts getting changed or they change it, they know which when it was
You're talking
updated.
Like
in
a draft.
footer.
Correct. When it was updated, it's just missing it, because it's gonna be on everything else, I just wanted to. point
Oh,
that
that
out.
part, okay, got it.
So we know which one's the updated version,
Okay.
when it comes out.
And then we know where it came from.
Correct.
Well, this is the one that they've been using though, right?
No,
This one is.
Yes.
The
This is
reason,
one,
or the request for books.
information materials and information request.
Was
form.
that just the one that's been using?
It's been in- I took it off I stole it from.
It was
Oh,
online.
you just made it.
You just made us a copy. It's on.
Because it's
under
usually
copy
smaller,
counter.
I need a little bigger.
You just made it, this was the one that we had had before, I didn't see that it was the same thing.
Oh, now those are two different
No,
forms.
there's-
That's
yeah.
the reconsideration
Oh,
form
hold
in
on.
your hand that's current.
Oh, I guess I didn't have it, okay, thank you.
Did you get one?
No, I have this one, I
We
don't
were
have the
talking
one
about
that's
this
being
thing,
used right
correct?
now at
Oh,
the
I
library.
think so.
Did you go
Well,
on
she
the
was talking
website?
Yeah,
about the
yeah,
old
I did.
reconsideration form that's currently being used.
It's in the website.
I thought it was new, so yeah, I think it needs a date on.
She's still talking about, you're talking about reconsideration form, not the.
No, I'm talking about the request one, but I
But that's,
did,
I can-
on the, it's on the website.
Okay.
Okay, okay.
I got
Put a
it.
date on it, then we're all happy and
Right,
current.
yeah, then I know it's the one that's being used now.
Oh, no, put a date on
I just put all three things of this meeting, in a little folder, so it's this meeting that has a date. That works too.
No, I meant, yeah,
Okay, so
that's. all.
everybody's in agreement that we are keeping the reconsideration section 6.7 the way that it is with the minor changes that Lee Colson has
Right, so basically I'm gonna take out or staff, and I'm gonna put in digital card holder everywhere, even place that circle for them. Is
Yes.
that clear?
Yes.
Are we gonna require people to be present at the meeting where the reconsideration is?
I don't think we should require it, I think it's just like it's their choice whether they want to be or not. Somebody
Are you
probably.
saying somebody who was putting a book up for the reconsideration and they have a choice of whether they're there or not?
Do they have to be there? I thought I read somewhere that they had to be
Obviously, I
there.
think you want.
I would think they would want to, but I don't know.
Sometimes circumstances happen and they can't be.
The packets will be presented to the board by the card holder, 3-minute limit, who submitted the reconsideration packet, which I think should be just the form. A card holder can submit more. So it is saying, the way I read it, that they have to be present.
That was my intent.
Yeah,
They
I
have
think
to
it would be,
present To present. I think it might be an idea to consider even moving into the evenings and like
Yeah.
Murray talked about. But again,
Well, who's gonna make their case, you know, unless
Right, yeah.
they hire an attorney or something, somebody's gotta be there to.
To represent,
Yeah.
or reschedule.
well,
You know,
and the way it would work is if a card holder has submitted a reconsideration form and they do not show up at the meeting, what we can do, and they're on the agenda, we just table that book until the next meeting. It's not like,
Yeah.
it's not like you lose your place in line.
So they do have to be present.
I thought that was a good idea.
I think that's still a case by case basis. I don't think it's something we have to put in the policy.
Well, it isn't policy.
Well, it gives them the opportunity to speak.
No, it says that the packet has to be presented by the card holder.
So if they, my thought is if they aren't here to do it, then we bump it to the next meeting.
Yeah, I
There,
agree.
that, I agree
Because there's
with that.
unforeseen things, you know.
Right.
you know,
I'm not
six
saying
a.m.
We can
we-
reschedule.
So if you don't
We
show
can
up on the
reschedule.
day we've written you on the agenda,
And the
We don't
director,
just
the
kick you
director is
out.
the one
No.
that
They
keeps
can
track
reschedule.
of that.
Okay,
So
The
well,
director is the one that keeps track of that, or is it a board member? Or,
it would probably be the director, because that would be a point of contact.
so I'm a little confused, because they turn in their reconsideration form to the director, and the director gives it to the board members, but then it says that the card holder is giving it to them?
no, the card, well, yeah.
I mean, you just pointed that out, but in
Packets
my
will be
mind,
presented to the board by the
Yeah.
card holder.
but the director has already received it and already given it to the board members.
Okay,
So
so,
maybe we need to change the word text and say reconsideration request will be presented to the board by the card.
Yeah, not the
Yeah, just the
packets.
verbiage.
Yeah,
Okay.
Just change the verbiage.
Sounds good.
Reconsideration request.
I think if you follow through and do have the meetings in the evening when
And that just
people
makes
with
sense.
jobs can
because
attend, I
there are
think you've
some
got
people that
covered.
Yeah.
Outside the month.
I do have a question that popped up about the digital card holder. Can somebody under the age of 18 right now get a card without a parental signature at our library?
No. So, and my understanding is that, prior, you know, even if a person turned 18 and they still lived in their family's home, it would not, until they were on their own, they kind of limited their
It was per household.
per household.
It was just a question that popped into my head. Thank you.
So what are we thinking?
this procedure will be followed. 1, card holder fill out and sign the Boundary County Library Material Reconsideration Packet, which they receive the packet, but they don't,
And we're changing
Forward.
packet to another word.
well, they receive the packet, which is
We're taking the form.
form, because the form does not need to be returned to, the
The
packet.
packet. So
Okay.
on number
And the
1.
packet A is Boundary County Library Materials Selection Policy, Materials Reconsideration Form, and digital patron or card holders consideration letter.
Right, so they only have to return the form.
Right. Okay, it's had, okay. Library bill of rights is on the,
Right, yeah, it's a,
so each of the board of trustees is gonna receive a reconsideration form within 7 days of the library director receiving it. And at the next regular scheduled board meeting, the trustees will consider each material consideration form as a separate item by creator and title in order of receipt of complete hard copy material by the directors. So that, to me, makes it sound like it will be considered at the next meeting.
But then the wiggle sentence is, the board is able to limit reconsiderations to meet other library needs. Cause like when we do the budget, which,
Right, I understand that. But the way that's worded, it makes it sound like it's gonna be presented at the next meeting, but if they read the whole policy, how are you gonna get that?
I think it leaves it open for the board to be able, like you said, little room. I think it does. I don't think that'll be a problem.
well, and it still would fall under that 5-day for the agenda. So 5 days prior, it would be in the agenda that we would be reconsidering
Okay,
whatever
whatever.
title.
And this policy really, I don't think that it limits the board at all. They can at any time decide what they want to do. This doesn't limit them. It's limiting the director more than them. So I don't think there's gonna be a concern. They can do whatever feels comfortable in the amount of time that they have. All they have to do is have a posted within 5 days what they're gonna do.
Yeah, it seems to give the bandwidth needed for both the board and maybe that patron that had a family emergency and, you know, reschedule or whatever, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's adequate.
They can even change the agenda if they want to in the actual meeting. Like, there's ways to do that, so.
I know that that's
Yeah,
true.
no,
Is
there
that
is.
true, Charlie?
I've seen it happen many times.
I don't think so
Yeah.
either. Well, it shouldn't.
They can motion to change the agenda.
Yeah.
They can do that. I've been in meetings that they can do that.
I honestly don't know the process well enough to say, but based on the I-group training I took, my understanding is the
You can-
agenda's the
You can
agenda.
motion,
The agenda is the agenda.
you can motion to change.
I've seen it done the statewide way.
The one.
That would be over my head.
Well, you have an agenda that you have to follow, but if something happens, it has to be a legitimate reason.
Right.
It can't just be, oh, I'm changing the agenda, it has to be an emergency reason, but we're not bound so hard by the law that the board can't agree to change it.
That's another one of those little fine tune that may or may not ever come up.
Yeah, correct,
Yeah.
correct.
And Charlie's a doer with meeting money.
Okay, so we're good with the way the policy is written on what we received today, with the card holder, digital card
Digital
holder, and the director taking and so it pretty much stands as we have.
And then changing that one packet to form.
Well, and as we're going through, like in number 4, I use packet like 4 times. And I would change that all to reconsideration form or form, depending on how that all works out.
Right.
So I would go through and do that.
So the only packet is that initial packet that has all the information to the,
Right.
to the
Right.
card holder.
Because we don't want all that back, we just want the form.
Form.
So I will change that.
So The other thing that, as far as the package is concerned, we had discussed putting in the, laws that pertain to this as an appendix. And I believe that we could get into an appendix that is extensive about all the laws and stuff. And the ones that were presented are, a lot of them are old, in the 70s, and there's a lot of cases probably that we could. So I think that we should get out, that we have some legal verbiage in here on what is obscenity and stuff. So I don't believe that we need an appendix to the policy that has laws in it.
Well, and I don't want to speak for you, Doug, but my impression of your appendix was that it would be attached to the policy, not the reconsideration form.
That's the way I understood it, yeah, that's the way I understood everybody kind of agreed, or initially agreed on it.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
but I've actually I've been thinking about it too, and I think, I don't know that it's necessarily the kind of document where we want to attach laws to. I would be more than willing to say we will follow all applicable laws,
Right.
but laws can change. And so, to me, if we attach a law to this document, then we're saying we're following that.
well,
Well, that's not how I understood
yeah,
it. I just, this is kind of a list of legal decisions that have some bearing on this stuff. It's more of an educational thing. If you want to know more, this is where you can go. That's how I
yeah.
did it.
The thing is like,
You
you know, I
can
mean,
research on, it. You can research it.
Yeah, exactly.
And I don't mean to give it like a lesson here, but just to double tap on it. You have a thing called case law, and absolutely true. You can find case laws on everything, stuff that'll support your opinion, stuff that won't support your opinion. And then you have a thing called superior law, supreme law, superior law, below that, exactly. What we were talking about in regard is the superior law. And those are the laws, that's where you're talking about Title 18, US Code Title 18, specifically 1466 Alpha, Title 18, 18, this is now the state, that's federal, this is now state, 18-1515. These are all superior laws. And the superior law is what guides the framework for those case laws. Again, I'm not trying to do a lesson here or anything like that, but that's kind of what we're trying to establish. Put the framework of the superior law does need to be there, and it will guide those case laws. So not specifically the case law we want to put in, we want to put in the superior law, which guides that framework. Absolutely, those things can change if our state legislature comes out and updates 18-1515. By all means, it will be updated on our policy, but I believe it should be included.
Yeah, I think it gives people who may not be familiar with all this stuff, it gives them some keywords and some search terms, and they can.
Our state legislatures create that framework, and they do it to give us that guidance, that legal guidance. And I think it should be included. That's me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I agree.
Well, one of the cases though that you put is referencing just schools. And since it's a public library, you put it's the Education Island Tree Union Free School District number 26.
Which one is it?
The middle one on
On the
sheet
first
that he
page?
gave us.
On the first page? Or is it on that side?
On the front page.
Okay, so again, those are case laws.
Right,
Which
yeah.
one are you looking at? Are you looking at the one that was handed out last meeting?
From Doug.
Yeah. Yeah,
Oh,
so,
is this
so, yeah, so again, those are case laws.
Right, yeah.
Case law, there are literally thousands of case
Right,
laws,
right,
right?
yeah.
What I'm talking about is the superior law. The superior law is what dictates how, well, these judges and these cases found their end state. I'm very critical that, and I think Murray and some other people do agree to, and I know a lot of people in the audience agree too, that superior law framework does need to be nested within there. Because again, that's what gives the guidance. And, we're kind of in this predicament right now because as a society, we've had lack of guidance. And now we're here in a committee policy meeting. So I think if we do insert those, and again, our legislatures have been hard at work to create these.
But it
I
does
think we
say in
need to-
here, following of the law, and I think that's getting into the political part, that
Well, the law's not political.
Having the framework as an appendix so people can do a deeper dive.
So what does your appendix look like?
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering, because I do agree,
So-
when I read through it,
So like, I guess I'm thinking logistically, I'm writing this up. When we do the first sentence on the front page, it says, Boundary County Library follows all state and federal laws, and I will write appendix A.
Right.
And then, do you see this document here, the references that you sent
That's what I'm
us?
looking at right here.
Okay, so you,
But you're not talking about including all of that
in the appendix,
Well, I do think that appendix should be in there, you know, to give, again, that legal superior law framework. And, you know, some case law I think should be in there as well. Maybe, maybe other people feel differently, but, you know, that legal framework I think is important. And I hear what you mean on the politics side. I would say case law is probably more on that political side of you know, creating conflict. But when we look at injecting the superior law, that is not political, that's just law.
but that's,
so, wait a minute. So if I say the Boundary County Library follows all state and federal laws, I guess so what you would like to see is what specifically laws we're following.
Yeah, I think,
A reference to.
right. You know, and, you know, not to reiterate again, or to, you know, talk on my own words again, but, you know, the legislatures in every state and federally, you know, create these frameworks to make sure that we have a functional society, an organized, functional society, within limits, right? And I think it's important to make sure that we are incorporating that, not necessarily the case law, but remember, it's the superior law that guides the case law. Superior law is what guides, if things do go to maybe a trial environment, it is those superior laws that guide the ruling by judges and juries. So,
would you
we-
describe,
yeah,
I'm
go
sorry,
ahead.
define superior law?
I did, well, again, so superior law is,
Talking about case law versus statutory law, right? They're two different bodies. Okay, one of which, and why you probably don't want case law in here, because case law can be wildly contradictory.
right, that's where we're talking, it can be political.
Whereas the framework ultimately is gonna be political too, I mean, in a philosophical sense, but the framework is gonna be less, subject to really, you know, wildly contradictory kinds of stuff that could be more confusing than helpful. And I think having that statutory framework in there in the appendix, if nothing else, it gives people that are reading the policy an idea what was in our heads when we put this thing together, and it gives them an anchor to delve further into the subject if they choose to.
So who created the superior law?
So when you look at it layered, you have a thing called, you have a thing called supreme law, right? Supreme law, law of the land. Our Bill of Rights is what we call supreme law. Below that, you have superior law. Superior law is what, well, sometimes what the state legislatures will create in their legal bodies. Then below that, that's what guides your case law, like Murray's saying. And again, that's where you can get, again, thousands of cases, and it's all subjective on that case law and how those, you know, depending on how it was formed in a courtroom, whether it was a judge or a jury coming to a decision point. So I agree with, and I know Murray agrees with me too, it is important to keep that legal framework, because that's really not political, that's just the law. The case law, sure, absolutely can be, you go to California, a case law decision is gonna be way different on probably a similar argument than the decision set might be in a state like Idaho, right? So those are those differences, and I see what you're saying.
Okay.
But I would say that we should stay on the path of injecting that superior law framework. You can't go wrong with good guidance.
Okay, what's the title on your page there? Is that the one with the Miller test on it?
Yeah.
No, the one I'm looking at is, there was some, yeah.
I don't.
You don't have
I
that?
can't find it.
I guess my question, again, goes back to the logistics of the document. So, I'm looking for a way to attach this to the document that would make sense. And, could I write, like Title 18 of the United States Code? We follow that, because it's mentioned several times. And then, Section 18 of Idaho statute, because
Well, you know, I,
to me,
it is
breaking
2
down these
pages,
specific,
but I think if we did maybe a front and back page, printed front and back, you know.
It isn't that long.
Yeah, yes. The one I have is just two
I mean, you
pages.
could even, you don't even have to go into all that detail. You know, you have the part, okay, you know, we follow applicable state and federal laws. For example, see appendix, whatever it is.
Right.
A, B.
Yeah, we can put it,
You don't have to say anything more than that.
And they can look it up if they want.
If they wanna get
They want
deep
to
into
research
it, they
it
can.
further, they can.
It gives them the option to do
And then
it.
they can look at all the case law they want after that. A lot of it out there.
so if I put the appendix, so I would put, for example, appendix A, right, at this point.
Appendix A is the library bill. of
what we
Well,
would do
we-
is change appendix A to the library
just
bill of
make it
rights to appendix B.
Right, because it, for my mind, it has to be the first one, or
Yeah.
it's got to be A and the second one has to be B. But I'm trying to picture how this is gonna look, okay? So, are you imagining that we're gonna have this written document?
Well, you know,
Or like the
Revise
website?
it.
I would.
On points?
Yeah, I
Whatever
would encourage that, you know, and as Murray was saying too, it'd be one thing if this was 15 pages, right?
Right.
I got 2 pages and they're single-sided. You know, if we could maybe do just a one pager with the front and back, you know, a double-sided page, I think that would be adequate.
Or maybe even take, because there's a lot of words in here that I don't think people would even read. If there's a way to take all these points, because I agree with every one of these, and put it condense it into
Yeah.
just one page.
Absolutely,
I think
absolutely.
it can be done.
We can definitely condense it. I'll look at that and
Just like
See
the
what we can
materials
do.
reconsideration form.
Yeah.
It's
Sure.
simple.
And I think we can do it and still get the idea of
Yeah.
what it is, and then if they want more information on it, then they can go to
right.
it.
And then, you know, in 5 years, if, you know, 18-1515 is changed, well, of course, then it gets updated, you know, to reflect what
Anything else,
the superior law is. Right,
Yeah.
right.
And they're changing stuff right now.
Sure.
I guess my concern is that we do not just follow these laws that we've listed here specifically.
Just get your,
Correct.
say, for examples, see appendix. Whatever, I don't think it's necessarily to have an exhaustive list of
Well-
every single piece of statutory law that could potentially apply here. You just put some stuff out to kind of orient people.
I think that this list, instead of the appendix A going where the Boundary County Library follows all federal and state laws, I think this covers over where we had it before, where it says, on the second page, where it says, the Supreme Court has ruled that there are certain narrow categories of speech. These are a lot of the things that it's covering right here that are restricting when somebody brings up, well, that's my First Amendment right to have it in the library. And it's law that it doesn't cover that. These are
But
laws.
that does say that in there, that the library will follow.
Correct, it does. I'm
State
just
federal,
saying that
you know,
he brought up that it isn't all the laws, and it isn't. I think if that's a concern, I think we could put this Appendix A back where we had originally had it behind that paragraph,
Right.
is all I'm
Basically,
saying.
it's taking somebody's philosophies and putting it in there.
No.
It's
no,
not a
because
philosophy,
it's
this
superior.
is superior, this is the law of our land.
Now, if it was case laws,
It already says on page 3 of 9 that, materials for minor entities, 18 that violate Title Code 18/1513, 18/1514, and 1515 will be excluded from children's, young people, and young adult collections.
Correct, so we
So
could
that
probably put
covers
it
it.
there, we could probably put it there too. Well, but also so does the Library Bill of Rights, but we're putting the appendix in. We list the Library Bill of
Yeah.
Rights, but we're putting an appendix in showing it why,
So would you say just don't have any appendices at all?
no, I'm saying add the second.
No, I think all those should be there. I'd like to see the library bill of rights and I like to see all references.
Yeah, I do too.
I guess my concern is,
It's not that much stuff, we only have.
I know,
pages.
and I'm not, this is not the hill on which I will die, for sure. But I wanna make sure that it's clear that we follow all the laws. And that, to me, that's, I don't want somebody to come in and say, well, you're only following the law that you cited in Appendix A. I want people to understand that we were following all the laws.
Well, again, they're laws, specifically they're laws within scope. You know, I wouldn't call for, you know, some type of, BLM, you know, land, law framework to be in here, because it wouldn't apply. But I think that these,
Yeah.
No.
right, yeah. See, it wouldn't apply.
Clarify.
But in this regard, I would say that this, you know, superior, referencing these superior laws do apply.
You know, it's easy enough to phrase this so that his statutory law list isn't supposed to be interpreted as being completely exhaustive, nor does it need to be.
But it's putting in specific individuals' political views.
No, it's putting in the
Putting
superior
in the law
law.
is
No,
written.
he's
down
not
to
talking
state
about putting, he's
legislature
talking
and
about
the
putting, like, this is the Idaho statute.
in Congress.
This is what our law is for Idaho, he's talking about putting that law in.
But if you're already citing, you know, specific, you know, why does this have to be repeated?
Well, just like the library bill of rights, you know, we talk about it, but we also include it.
It's a reference.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I think you're overthinking this. This is just supposed to be basically a guide for people who want further information and to do a deep dive. It gives them a place to start.
But if, I mean, if it's already referenced specific numbers, can't they reference from that? They couldn't find it by looking up.
Well, just like the library bill of rights, you know, they could do that too.
Yeah.
We want to provide it, like everything.
I do suggest instead of us putting at the very first, that we put the appendix over to where we had originally had it. I think it's more appropriate there, because everything that is on your list, I think, points to and references what we're talking about with obscenity, child pornography, defamation.
Yeah.
I think
But then there's also references to the trustees and the, I mean, because basically there's the child pornography, obscenity, disseminating harmful material to minors, obscene material dissemination, obscene material definitions, obscene material dissemination to minors policy, and powers and duties of trustees. So
Yeah, you
this
know,
is-
just that
this is
superior
like-
law giving us that left and right limits of our guidance, you know, that's what it's,
I guess the thing that I don't understand is it seems to be a very specific group of things that we're worried about here.
well, I mean, the state of Idaho seems that it was, that's why they created the laws.
Well, I'm,
Pete, what exactly is your concern here on that?
I feel like we're limiting the things that we're gonna do. We're saying that this is the only laws we're gonna follow, and we're gonna follow all the laws.
Because when it gets adopted into a policy, then somebody can say, well, you didn't list that.
Right.
Or, you know, and
So,
it's,
so you're not, you're not interested in, I don't know, whatever.
Well, it's like
I have no
listing
idea.
homeschool as a separate entity from our community, which it isn't. It's absorbed into community. So,
Well, because we're listing it right here on 6.6, paragraph 7. Materials for minors under the age of 18 violate Idaho codes, again, they're produced here. So since we are specifically talking about that, just like we were specifically talking about the library Bill of Rights, we're including that as well, just like we're including this reference. And maybe if we do have a homeschool area, we can find some superior law about the homeschool.
but I think
absolutely
it could,
include
that appendix could be huge. I think.
within scope, yeah,
But
within
I think we're
scope.
still trying to keep it simple. We want information that somebody will read, because I agree with you, nobody's gonna read all that.
Yeah, that's a lot of words.
That it's referenced here, if somebody really wants to look this up, they can look it up. And maybe we don't list, but I think, the library Bill of Rights. It doesn't
I
need to
think
be
if we're-
listed either,
if
it
we're
can say
putting
there
that-
is a library Bill of Rights, look it up, because you can Google it and it pops right up.
My stance is, I like to see, I like to see the library Bill of Rights included, and these superior law references included as well. It's probably one or the other, either nothing's in there or everything's in there.
I would say
But I would say,
I don't see this as being limiting the scope of what you can do with the board at all. The person that you should ask this question to is your lawyer who's gonna do the legal
Right.
review on this thing.
And maybe
Right.
this is tabled.
Because I think he's gonna tell you that this is not necessarily, as a board, you're not gonna be bound just by this particular list of stuff that he has here. I don't see that at all.
right,
What I'm hearing and what I see is that maybe because we're building our references as our abilities. And with what I said, with it being behind that certain section, this powers and duties and trustees doesn't fit there. So maybe we take these different sections and points and only have in there what points to that paragraph of where that appendix is. And to me, that makes the most sense, because
Could still list that, list those.
list the things that are appropriate for referencing where we got that from, because I remember when I brought up, with the Supreme Court, that there's narrow categories of speech, that there were people that weren't familiar with what I was saying and what that means. And I think that there's gonna be people that read that might be in the same boat. So if we have a reference that points to what it's talking about and where those limited categories of speech are, then that's just gonna be a reference. It's just good writing to have references.
Right.
And I don't think it's appropriate to take everything out, but we do need to be specific of what we put in there. I agree. The part about the trustees, powers and duties of the trustees, isn't pertinent to that paragraph, so that might not necessarily go as the appendix there.
So what if I look into, because I'm not against putting references in there. What I would think would be a way to solve this is go to, find like the source document, because we're talking about like Title 18 and all that kind of stuff. Is there a place where, and then the first page, it says the Boundary County Library follows those state, and then I put the website or wherever that talks about state, library kind of laws. And then I say federal laws, and then I have a little hotspot, the little thing you click on, and it talks about the federal direction for library law.
Is there an actual section that has that?
I have no idea, but I would be willing to look for it.
And then that would just be
So to me, that gives,
on the first page.
that would be on the front page, and that would go exactly to where the information is that people could look up.
Cause I know this one, I know we had talked about putting links in it before, which isn't there. That's when we had taken out this appendix and we had agreed that, okay, well then the links would be at the end of the policy,
Right.
which isn't there. But I think the appendix is probably a better option, but there's, like this one right here that you're talking about, that you can't just go to the website and easily find it, cause it doesn't, obscenity law doesn't have anything to do with library law. It has to do with child obscenity, and it encompasses a lot of things. It encompasses books, it encompasses movies, it encompasses
Very broad.
acts of violence, it encompasses all of that. It's not just library specific, it's child specific.
Thank you.
And so.
Thank you.
That's why you can't just link that to it, because it's only a library it's associated with.
Then you're limiting your education.
For child pornography and obscenity?
No,
you're
I'm
not.
saying for whoever's looking it up.
That's what I'm saying, is you can't just link one link for this, because there's a lot of different sections.
Very broad scope.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's what I'm.
I don't know, I'm trying to figure out a way to do this. I'm not seeing it.
Well, I think Murray has a good point, maybe it's something to gauge with your email. But
Your key concern is that his list is somehow limiting, what the board can use for guidance or consideration when you're working and everything, and I just think that's flat out not true, but ask your attorney. Is the list of statutory law that he has there, is that gonna limit you as a board? See what he says. I don't know the answer to that, but my guess is it isn't, but I'm not a lawyer.
I think how it limits is already how it limits. I mean, it's already the law of the land, so whatever it is already limiting you.
Exactly.
With how it is. Stating it is not going to limit you anymore. than what it
And
already
it's just
is.
like, I think the last two meetings,
not my
you
opinion.
were looking at,
It's
what was
the
it,
law of the
Breckenridge
land.
versus
How is that
Ohio?
an opinion?
Then why is
Now,
that
see,
not?
With the case law, exactly.
Why is it
So
not
that's where we, and I,
Right,
Just-
so exactly, so, and I had some case law too.
right.
So I think the best way to do this, to again, make it non-political, because again, I can find, and you can find some case laws, right? But the superior
It's
law
referencing what's appropriate
is non-political,
for that.
it's basic, I mean, it's basic, superior law.
Right, it's the rules of the road, and I get that.
Right, right.
And I absolutely get that, and I certainly want to make it clear that we're following the rules of the road. That's what this is all about. We're gonna-
Me too, same here.
We're gonna follow the rules of the road. I guess I just want to do it in an efficient and clean way.
So
I'm not exactly sure how
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
gonna look at this stuff.
I think maybe we're getting a little bogged
Yeah.
down.
Do we want to table this
Yeah,
until we
maybe
get
table
some
it,
hard
like
copies
Murray
of what
said,
people
maybe
are
engage
thinking
with,
and?
Yeah,
the lawyer.
Ask, just keep it simple, asking, is this gonna limit the actions that the board can take?
So my question for the lawyer is, what are the ramifications if I use these specific citations as an appendix in my policy document?
Yeah,
Because that's what I want to know.
yeah. Ask him, see what he says.
Yeah, I
Let me
think,
write that down.
Yeah, I think he'd be able to navigate, any questions and,
He might even have an idea about how we can do it better and still have an appendix, and just see what he says.
right.
So what are the effects? Because I think that's the part that concerns me, is we have some very specific citations.
it's definitely geared to a certain topic.
And honestly, it seems like all these laws are good ideas, great ideas, things that we should be following. But, I just want to make sure that we're doing this the right way.
No, absolutely, and I just, wanted to include him because, you know, our state legislatures create these laws. They create them for a reason. Like you said, a lot of good stuff in there. You know, these are very smart people that have had a lot of experience in their walks of life. They're people that we elect, they're people that we entrust to represent us and create those laws. And, you know, we're all about following the law of the land, you know, so no, yeah, I hear what you're saying, and, you know, we'll just see what, you know, what those limits, you know, create from what that, I guess the lawyer might say. I think that's a good place to start.
Good next step. All right. Okay, so, do we want to, so if we table that idea, and,
We can still adopt the other changes.
Right, yeah, I think-
Right.
The little stuff,
Because that's the,
put that into one motion and adopt it.
okay, so we will have a motion. I would like to, if somebody could give me a motion to accept as is, except for the table appendix.
Motion.
second,
Okay. So I'm guessing the motion is that we accept the document as written.
as, like, with it, but
With,
the-
with,
additional
with
part
the
of-
additional small changes we discussed.
Okay.
Do we still have 15 minutes, or are we?
We do.
We still gonna have public comments.
Well, I still have stuff I wanna go over in the policy, do we still have time,
Well,
or? Are we
let's-
closing
we have
down
to
what we're
vote on
talking?
this
Yeah,
first
that we're
before we-
closing, tabling that, it just sounded like you were
No,
ending the
I
whole
was
thing.
Oh, that's
ending
fine.
the law thing,
Well,
and we were
this
gonna
is
go to the
just-
next topic.
Okay, sounds good,
Oh,
Which, after we get done voting, then it sounds like you guys
sounds
talk.
good, yeah.
Okay, so, accepting as written with changes.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, and I agree. Okay, so, next point.
So I was gonna bring up on the second page, that same section that we were looking at, the fourth paragraph down, where it says relying on principles of intellectual freedom and equal access for all, the Bounty County Library makes available at diversity. Second
This is
page,
6-4.
Yeah, 6-4, paragraph 4.
yeah, I'm suggesting we take out relying on the principles of intellectual freedom and equal access for all. I don't think that, when I reread it, I think that paragraph it's not needed, just starting with the Boundary County Library makes available a diversity of ideas and information. Because it's relying on a lot more than just intellectual freedom and access for all, and we're working with a lot more than just that.
Yeah.
I think that limits what
So
we're
you just
actually.
wanted to drop that first.
I just wanna
sentence.
scratch off that first.
I'm sorry.
That's what we
So
did.
we capitalize the and boundary?
Yeah,
Just to clarify, you're saying.
yes, take that off.
Is that like in a different font than everything else?
It is.
Yeah, it is.
I will look at that. Okay.
The next thing I have is on the next page, 6.5. The materials for minors under the age of 18. And that's where we had specified the actual Idaho statutes, and we list them. I think we need to be more specific than listing the codes. Most people, when they see those codes, they don't know what that is. It's like a gloss over. It's like, well, what is 18-15-13? What is that? So I think we need to actually specify what that is, which is the Idaho Obscene Materials for Children.
Yeah.
So instead of saying materials for minors under the age of 18 that violate Idaho's codes, or they're actually statutes, and then list the numbers, I think we need, I'm suggesting that we put materials for minors under the age of 18 that violate Idaho's obscene materials for children law will be excluded.
But still list the codes.
We can list the codes if we want to. I don't think
Yeah,
that
you definitely,
hurts anything. It will make it so people can go to it. But I think we need to be specific and list what it is.
So you mean actually put the title of the statute?
Actually say that it's about obscene materials for children.
Yeah.
To me, I thought that that described it. If anybody has a different way of saying what it is, those codes cover obscene materials for children.
yeah, that's a relatively minor change. No big deal one way or the other.
So, materials for minors under the age of 18 to violate Idaho code.
Just take out Idaho, well, we could put Idaho code or have that after, that violate Idaho's obscene materials for children statutes. 18-15, 13, 18-15, 14, and 18-15, 13.
Because they're all called something different.
Well, that's what I'm saying, if somebody thinks of a better way to describe it, that's, one of them describes it, one of them is definitions.
So let's take in that too, because I'd like to just look at that.
Yeah,
Is that okay?
yeah, and here's my next question to think about,
Wait, sorry.
while we're looking at that.
Okay, so, materials for minors under the age of 18 that violate Idaho obscene materials for children codes. How does that sound?
Yeah.
For minors is more specific.
Mhm.
Code, and then need codes numbers in there.
Yeah,
Yes,
we can do
definitely.
that. I think it will help people know what we're talking about.
So 15, 13, okay, all right, thanks.
My next question is, why in that next section do we say obscene materials for adults are gonna be excluded for the library? But we're perfectly fine with saying obscene materials for minors, we're gonna keep in the library. Why is there a difference? And I'm not understanding what that is. We're fully willing to say that.
Yeah.
I think we should exclude obscenity for children and obscenity for adults.
Yeah. I agree.
Well, it does say excluded.
It's where
You wanted to
no,
put the
we're
sentences together?
We're excluding adult materials that fall under the definition of obscenity, but materials for minors
wanna
that
say
fall
add
under
adult.
we're putting them out in the adult section. But these are books that are materials
But it
for,
says excluded right there.
excluded from the children's
Children's.
section.
Young people.
But we're
and
still
adults.
willing to put
Well,
materials
maybe
that are
that makes
written.
sense. I don't, was that you that said it, Doug? Just put materials for minors and?
No, but there's a really quick and easy way to do it, just cross out adults and just say materials.
And take out that whole section.
And just put it together.
That will exclude them from the library altogether, not just move them upstairs.
Yeah, it streamlines it, it's to the point, it's, yeah. And I agree.
So that those materials are all there.
No, they're all not in the library at all. Why are we willing to put materials that are written for minors that are obscene in the library, but we're not willing to put materials for adults that are obscene in the library?
But see, that's where it comes down to definition again. With,
Yeah, and that's why
and that's why it's obscenity versus pornography.
No, I'm talking about obscenity. I'm talking about obscenity. I'm
So-
talking about what Idaho law states is obscenity. Why are we willing to put books that are written for children that are considered obscene?
So what
as-
you're saying is just take out, just put materials
Which
come within the Supreme Court
United States definition
will be
of
excluded, and there's that
obscenity.
definition. And so that it's.
Then we
there's
don't
nothing
even-
about-
The only thing you have to do is just take out one word and leave the rest of it as stands.
Just take it out of the.
Take out adult, and the rest of it's fine.
But then we don't
But
need
then you
that.
still have the.
We don't need the paragraph above it for minors.
Well,
That
it's
wouldn't even need it.
materials and materials.
It's
Okay, just
materials.
take that out.
I totally.
So just take out
Perfect.
materials for minors, blah, blah, blah.
Yep, and then we don't even need to list
And
the
then take
code,
adult
because we
and
follow all
just say
state laws anyway.
materials. Right, and then it
like
just has that definition.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, that'll work.
So the question I would ask
Mhm.
is, does that, so the way I'm reading this is, if we say materials which come within the Supreme Court of the United States definition of vicinity will be excluded. That covers all the materials in the paragraph above,
I think
correct?
so.
Mhm.
Is
Are
that, I
we
think so.
reading that the same way?
I think so, yeah.
And then it would be all the books.
Well, we've already agreed to that on the front page. 'cause we're
Exactly.
So
not following-
maybe we just need to X the whole thing.
I am great with that. I
Take it
think
out.
that covers my question, yeah.
If it's already covered in the beginning.
So that is not taken.
I don't even think that we need this paragraph above, people can object to that. If they think that the Supreme Court definition of obscenity, I think we could take that out also. I think that that's something that,
I think we need that in there.
you think we do?
I do.
Well, can that paragraph go to where it's talking, about vicinity
I think it is,
earlier?
I think it is a perfect place for it.
So
Just leave it.
you guys then, I kind of like the fact that the specific Idaho statutes that involve the minor porn or minor obscenity stuff, the fact that we do have those listed there, I think is a good thing.
Well, should we include it underneath that paragraph then, just combine the two paragraphs, take out the two sentences?
I think that would work, yeah.
I think so
Because I
too.
actually, I do see what you're saying there, I think that.
Since we're listing the Supreme Court definition, also have the Idaho. Because this definition that we put in here does only pertain to adults. It doesn't pertain to children. There's a whole different definition that the Supreme Court has stated for child materials on obscenity, whereas the Idaho law, that section is very specific to children also. So we can have both of them in, and we're covering the adults and the children in just one paragraph.
Reed, are you following this? Understand what,
So
where we're at here?
I guess I'm struggling to follow, because what I would like, so, to me, there's two different things we have to be careful of. We have to make sure that the things that are coming into the library are not, okay, so we're at like our 30 minutes. But the things that are coming into the library, I guess I kind of like the idea of seeing minors, because to me, a minor needs more protection because they are a minor.
Agreed.
And I actually kind of like the idea that because there are specific codes written for them, that I don't, in the grand scheme of things, these 3 paragraphs are not gonna make or break the world. And I would just assume at least keep the materials for minors section in, and we can cross off adult, because again, it aligns with our first opening statements, that we will follow the Supreme Court direction.
I think if you just crossed out adult, it's
Right.
fine.
Okay, we're back
It's
to-
fine.
yeah.
I would like to keep the materials for minors, because to me, there's a difference between an adult makes a choice and a minor gets protection, right? To me, those are different.
Then it goes back to, why are we moving them just out of the section? Why don't we just add, if we're gonna keep that paragraph, can we just add it like we do the other materials and say it will be excluded? It's contradicting to me. So instead of saying will be excluded from the children's, young people, young adults, it's just excluded.
Well, I think if we take out adults, that
Yeah,
takes
then
out
that.
Oh, I
falls
agree,
down
but
below.
he was saying leave
So if we
that
just
paragraph.
Just take that word off and just put materials and leave all that. Just leave everything but.
So what they're asking about is that word right there, excluded from the children's, young people, and young adult sections. So I would have to look at that. I would have to
So
think
we
about
can
that.
table.
Because I'm not
So we're back to
sure.
table it.
You're back to table. I like that table. I got a table.
Because I sort of agree with Lee that we should specify, we really don't want obscene materials in our children's section. I mean,
Well, we don't want them in the whole library. That's what, that second paragraph, we say that we're gonna exclude it. That's where my conflict is. Is it's like, why are we saying that we're gonna exclude it? But then the paragraph before, we say we're only gonna exclude it from the children's section. It doesn't make sense that we would take a material that's written for a minor and
but
put it in the
obscene
adult.
material for adult is not obscene,
Ag-
I mean, for a
agreed.
child is not obscene material for an adult.
Correct, so why would we take a book that is written for a child? So there's lots of books that are in the adult section that wouldn't be appropriate for a child. That's not gonna be there, but also a child isn't going to necessarily be drawn to read it. I know some books I've enjoyed reading that I would never have my child read.
Okay, I'm losing your point. I guess.
These are books that,
I'm brain dead now.
right here, this paragraph, materials that are written for minors. This isn't a book that's written for an adult, or a movie or whatever, a material that's written for an adult, that happens to not be appropriate for a child. This is an actual material for a minor that is obscene. And those are the books that we are saying, and those are the ones that, because the Idaho statute, if you read through it, if you take the time to read through it, the only way that it falls under that statute is if it is for a child. It's not limiting a book that's for an adult or a material that's for an adult. It's only for a child, and that's intended for a child. So the author says, hey, I'm writing this book for a 6-year-old, and then they throw obscene stuff into it. That's what it's talking about.
We're covered already.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We're good here between the Idaho statute and the Supreme Court, it's covered.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
think-
And that's stated,
Yeah.
Okay, so why are we saying that we're putting it up in the adult section? That's the part I'm confused about. I'm confused of why
Where
we're
does
putting
it
those.
say that it goes to?
We're back to the word excluded.
Oh, excluded from the
So
children's.
Oh, so
the
we just-
implication is if it's excluded from the children's, young people's, and young adult collection, it's
That's
possibly
what I.
That's how
not
I look at it.
excluded from the adult section.
Right.
Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah, say that again, I'm sorry.
So if it's excluded from, by policy, it's excluded from the children's, young people, and young adult collections, means that it's possibly not excluded from the adult section.
Okay, so I'm thinking too much into it.
Yeah,
Is what you're
I
saying.
think you're overthinking it
Okay.
big time.
I think Murray had it,
Yeah.
leave that,
Just take adult out and
take
leave the
adult
rest
out,
as it is.
capitalize
I
materials.
like that, that's what
And
I
then-
think, should
and
we
it's
have a
good.
vote on that?
Yeah.
Because I really.
So I move that we just drop the word adult and then make materials the first word in that sentence.
I second
Is that?
Well, you just, like, willy-nilly doing stuff. Oh,
It's been moved and seconded.
all right.
See, we got something that's simple here, we
Yeah.
don't.
I'm not, I'm not a secretary. Cross it over. Okay.
So it will read, materials for minors under the age of 18 that violate Idaho code, blah, 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 will be excluded from the children's, young people, and young adult collection. Materials which come within the Supreme Court of the United States definition of obscenity, seen below, will be excluded.
Okay.
Right? That's the way we want it?
Yeah,
Okay,
Okay, so agreed?
And
Agreed.
keeping Superior Court.
yes,
yeah, keep it.
He's okay. Accept it.
Okay,
agreed.
agreed?
Great.
Yes.
All right. Wow. Okay, so we are cutting into our half hour.
But we only have one person,
We only
so.
have one person. So why don't we do that? Adrian?
Oh, you want me to speak?
Yes? you
Oh.
are up.
Give your 3 minutes. I will get my timer out. I got my timer.
Oh, I won't be that long.
Okay.
I still put it on because that's what would be fair for others.
Can you come up here, please, so that the recording can
You want me on camera? Since you're on camera, I have to do that, right?
We want to be able to hear you on this.
I have to hear you on my recorder.
Okay, So we got a little stuck on the reconsideration on how the staff was actually gonna handle it, like the director and so forth. And just as a thought here, I think it's important to maybe put the fine details into the policy for the personnel that you guys are about to update soon. And I know the committee doesn't have much on that end, but I just wanted to let you know that, Lee. Because you're right, we could have 20 pages of this policy, and I don't think the, you know, if the card holder has that many questions, they can ask for a copy of the personnel policy, right? So that's my thought on that. And then as far as the links, for the appendix, maybe, I hear what, Laura Anderson had to say. And so like, and I also heard you, Lee, maybe do the links only, and if a person is really that upset, they're gonna go and do their own research. I mean, I just think about my experience last year. I didn't know at first in March what I was asking for, so that's why my speech was very vague, and I went after books that I really didn't understand, and they weren't really the books I was really worried about. And then as the months progressed, I realized the obscenity laws and why we have filters on our computers, and then I started realizing it's actually about what the law says. So I changed, and so I think that a lot of people that are going for these reconsideration forms, if they really are upset that bad, they're gonna go and do their research. If not, they kind of set their own doom. No offense, but they do. And then as far as what Laura said, I think I hear what you're saying, and it's hard because like I've got my side, and I think that you and I are not necessarily aligned with our beliefs. And what she's saying is it's not a spectrum of perspectives when you're only putting the obscenity laws on the appendix. So as a recommendation, I was thinking, what about the anti-discrimination law? Okay, and then what about the Age Discrimination Act of 1975, which says that if you accept federal funding, you cannot discriminate someone on their age. That's why we have the filters on the computer, and why the Supreme Court did not judge on the shelves, I have no idea. But if they would have judged, we would not even be where we are today, because there would not be any obscenity in our library, period, because they do receive federal grant money. That's how we get our computers and other things in our facilities. So I think the Age Discrimination Act of 1975 is very important. And I also think that if we ask the lawyer, he would probably do a little digging, and he'd get even more that maybe Laura and I aren't even thinking about, or other people in the audience. You know, because she's right, there are other people we have to think about on the spectrum and what their rights are. So I was thinking about that. And I'm gonna embarrass someone, I'm sorry, but
I'm sorry, Adrian, that was
can I just
3
put
minutes.
this one because it's
Well,
about,
we didn't let anybody do that last time.
it's
so-
not even about,
I know,
the
I'm sorry.
situation.
Remember when Mary asked to speak longer, we told her no. I'm sorry, Adrian. Okay.
well, I'll talk to you later.
Not today.
No, Lee, I was talking to Lee.
Oh, okay.
Well, I just seem not get embarrassed, if that's okay.
Could everybody else give their time if we have the time, I'm just saying. If somebody would wanna allot their time to her, we could do that.
Let's, first we gotta figure out what.
It was actually a clerical error, but it's fine.
Oh,
It's fine, I can talk about it later.
So, the plan is,
Can I make a comment first?
sure.
When I first, talked about letting the audience speak, that is more in line with what I was thinking of, was to have comments about what we've gone over so that we could have the community input. Last time I felt really attacked because it didn't seem like it related to anything that we've discussed for that day. So I appreciate, Adrian, that you commented on actually what we have been talking about today.
And yeah, and that is true. But, you know, I think we said it that was gonna be 3 minutes and we did hold people to
No,
that last time.
I'm just saying that,
Yeah.
I appreciate what
Oh,
you have to do
no,
with the
no.
meeting today.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
and that is true, and that's a good point, because that is the purpose.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking about motioning that we never have anybody talk again.
So part of this though is us as a community learning how this works.
Right, yeah.
And you know, for good, better, and different, the way we did the policy last time created quite a lot of angst in the community. And part of that is getting that, part of this process is getting that angst out, so people can say what bothers them. So I think kind of that two-pronged thing where people were mad and they had things to say, and we didn't give them an opportunity. And the other thing is, we are all kind of learning how this all works.
And I appreciate her
And
pointing
I
out
did.
that she grew as she got more information, which is,
Yeah.
all of us are growing as
Oh,
we get
exactly.
more.
On the very specific items that we were discussing, I thought was very helpful. So, the idea is that, not next Wednesday, the 15th of February. And I will get this out to the group, the revisions that we talked about today. What I would like you to do, maybe even Doug and Murray both, and maybe you, Esther, get together a list of citations with website hotspots. Does that kind of make sense? And we can say, and if we can order them in such a way that, you know, we talk, it seems like we should, I don't know, I don't exactly see how I'm going to put this together as a document. It hasn't occurred to me yet. I'm gonna think about it for a while and pull some stuff together. And maybe what we can do is between the four of us, do a little interchange and see what we can come up with. Because I'm not against putting it as an appendix, I would just like it to be a clean.
But just one comment here, because I think this is really important and why in certain government agencies you are not even allowed just to use websites for this. You have to have some kind of hard copy listing of what, at least, you know, a name and a reference to the statute, whatever, for the simple reason is that website addresses are volatile for the most part. You know, there is such a thing as an archival address, but those are far and few between, right? You know, these things, it's not like ISBN numbers that you can just hit and you go to the Library of Congress. A lot of the web compilations that have been referenced here have potentially volatile
Well, maybe what we could
e-addresses,
do
so there's
is,
gotta be something there.
In my
like,
opinion,
break out
yeah.
Title 18, you know, this is Title 18, this is, you know, and I remember when I went to the state of, or the Idaho website, they had, how I navigated was I used their, you know, they have that table of contents looking thing that you can just go to and click on. And maybe if we put that table of contents in it as an appendix, and, you know, have a way for people to reference the whole thing. I guess if we reference the whole thing and just put it in there, that would be something I would be really comfortable with, and it gives people a chance to go find their own information out. And maybe we don't have to hot point it or whatever that is. Maybe we just send them the table of contents and they can go Idaho Code 14 or 18, 15, 15 and look it up exactly for themselves. And you know, if we put that as a reference, that I would be totally comfortable with.
Yeah, and that's, you know, I agree with that, and to kind of caveat what you're saying, that where, you know, my experience with it always was, and this was a little different lane, this was with UCMJ, but whenever we did have our policies, it did have, you know, a physical reference, what we're gonna develop that reference looking like, you know, maybe this may be condensed, maybe, you know, what the lawyer says as far as formulating that. But my experience was it always did have a, you know, a physical attachment to it too. That was always a standard procedure. So I don't know if that follows in this realm of the world, but
Well,
it seems to be your
it's a practical concern. It's why in a lot of learned journals, law journals, for example, and many other kinds here, with the exception of certain library references that are hard archival web addresses that aren't supposed to change, basically, you know, like Library of Congress, for example.
Yeah.
In my experience, it's really frustrating to go into documents right, and hit dead links,
Yeah.
right? And that's what we want to avoid
Right,
here,
right.
is so people can at least know where to go
Right.
to get the information,
Yeah.
assuming that links will change and.
It solidifies that path to continuity.
If we put in like 18, section 14, 15, or whatever they all are, and they can just zip it with their copy and paste it into Google and look it up.
Sure.
And they can do Idaho code.
Right.
And then we avoid that whole becoming obsolete,
Yeah.
getting a dead reference,
Yeah.
and we just tell them,
Well, that's what we're all
Yeah.
saying. We just need to give them enough information that they can search.
Yeah.
on
Then
their
they
own.
can have a guide.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What,
yeah.
Just the
That
guide.
path to continuity,
Yeah.
that
And
guidance.
then they can search and they'll hit whatever, the current source is.
I'll ask whatever is done, can you forward it to us, what people send you before the meeting, so that I have time to look over it, not just that morning, but like you've been doing?
okay,
Like we did with the other one when we went over and you had mailed out it.
as soon as I get it organized and compiled, I will send it out.
Sounds good.
And we
That's
basically
been
have 2
helpful.
weeks between this one and the next one.
Yeah, that's really helpful to look over it before actually coming to the meeting.
Casey and I have to do it too.
Yeah.
I suggest you have the attorney look at the whole policy that it has redone so far and see if you can have him check it out.
I will swing by and talk to him today, and
Well,
See if it's
and
time.
since our next meeting is the day before the next board meeting, even if we approve everything, I'm not seeing how the board is gonna be able to really
so I'm
read
thinking
this
we're gonna have to
policy
go to.
in one day. So,
Yeah,
so I'm thinking that
because
we're gonna.
we're not gonna be done.
You don't think? One more meeting, just one more.
But it's just the logistics of it. You know,
Right,
if-
yeah,
If we were doing on the 8th, which the room isn't available, I think we'd be all right.
yeah,
But I think,
but, so
And-
we're
and
not
I'll
gonna
tell
be able
Bob.
to present it before the board, but it would be nice if the attorney gave us some guidelines, if there
Does
is
it-
anything.
Does a
that's
different
glaring.
day or a different time work for anybody, so
Totally
we could
underrated.
meet before the
Always,
15th?
always.
It's just.
Actually, I did want to talk to you.
Okay.
yeah, I don't know, it's kind of hard to organize them all. I think we're just gonna have to, it's really frustrating, I understand that, but there's a pace to these things.
So the policy won't go to the board on that?
No.
Okay.
Okay,
Don't
just,
worry about that.
I just wanted to clarify
Yeah,
that,
'cause
it's
that's
pretty
probably-
unlikely that that's gonna happen, so.
'Cause you-
So we will meet again.
So, Wednesday the 15th at 10,
Right here.
right here.
And I just want to throw out, thank you, Lee.
Yeah.
I mean, for doing all you do.
Mary Esther has motion to adjourn,
I have a motion
second.
that we
I'll
adjourn,
second
yeah.
it. All in favor?
Aye, aye, aye.
All right, well, thank you.